Our roundtable here to the table, Mark Leibovich of the New York Times Magazine, author of This Town, brand new book coming out Tuesday, already created a lot of controversy in Washington. Maggie Haberman of Politico, once again, Paul Gigot of the Wall Street Journal, Tavis, Smiley of PBS. And Maggie, let me begin with you because you were out there all week long with Eliot Spitzer. And I want to show this poll that he was probably referring to. I guess this shouldn't be a surprise. He's a well-known man leading the race for controller all of a sudden, 42 to 33 over Scott Stringer, and more than two-thirds of Democrats saying he does indeed deserve that second chance. Is that what you saw on the streets?
No, it is not what I saw on the streets, but I do think it is probably what we're going to see at the ballot box. I think that if nothing else comes out, and I think that if Stringer can't bring a credible case, nobody knows who Scott Stringer is. He's a nice man. I've known him a long time. He's been in Albany. He is not a known commodity. Spitzer is. It's a down-ballot race. This is a race that is largely won on name recognition. I think what you just saw in that interview, I think he will do that in the debate. I think that he will eat Stringer alive, potentially.
So what did you see on the streets?
On the streets, you saw people sort of standing back and not quite believing what they were seeing. We were not quite believing what we were seeing, candidly. But I think that people will remember the better parts of his record. And I think that, you know, I think that the public does believe in redemption. The person I think this hurts most is Anthony Weiner. I think it is very hard for him to have a path forward now.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I think I probably do, much to my regret. I mean, I think that if you are going to run for office after you have to seek forgiveness. You have to be contrite. I don't hear any contrition. I think he's only sorry about the fact that he committed a crime while he was a chief law enforcement officer of the state. I don't hear any contrition about the way he abused his office in power, taking cases in public, accusing people of crimes and then not bringing criminal charges, trying to force people out. I think he damaged AIG, the insurance company, by forcing out good management and then letting it go to people.
Now he's facing a lawsuit from the former head of AIG, and we are going to see Wall Street kind of rise up and try to stop this.
Well, he almost never brought cases, actually went to trial. He used his power through leaks and the media to be able to try cases in public. But when he ever went to trial, he lost. That's not the way you should behave as somebody who the voters have entrusted with discretion in power.
But the voters do seem pretty forgiving of personal failings.
They are forgiving. I think that what turns most of us off is hypocrisy, not mistakes. We all make mistakes. Hypocrisy is something very different. Now, these are egregious mistakes, I think, on the part of Mr. Weiner and Mr. Spitzer. I've always believed, since I've made so many mistakes in my own life, George, that the sum of the man is not the sum of the man. The SOME of us, thank God, is not the SUM of us, because we all make mistakes and deserve an opportunity to be redeemed. Here's what troubles me, though. It seems that in New York, and for that matter around the country, we seem to think there are only a handful of people who are qualified to be high-quality public servants, as if there isn't a larger pool of fellow citizens who ought to put themselves up. What concerns me is that dearth and paucity of other citizens who ought to put their names in the hat, as if Weiner is the only guy that can save the city, as if Spitzer is the only guy that can. That bothers me.
In both cases, Mark Leibovich, Anthony Weiner had a huge war chest left over from his congressional race. Eliot Spitzer has a personal fortune in that name recognition that Maggie's talking about.
No, absolutely. But I think another thing we've seen is that the cycle of rise and fall and rehabilitation and just instant front-runnerness, again, if you're going to throw your hat back in the ring, has just gotten really, really tight and really, really small. And I think, look, I mean, one of the larger lessons that I've sort of learned about Washington is that the neutral sheen of notoriety sort of takes over, and it's not so much
sheen of notoriety.
Yeah, that's good. Actually, I think I'm a I actually was not.
Is it corollary to all publicity is good publicity?
No, I don't think so. I should have thought about that. If I were smart enough, I would have thought about that. But no, I mean, look, I mean, the right or wrong becomes secondary to the winning and losing, to the actual fame itself.
And that's one of the subtexts of your book, This Town. And this is really something. It's not even out yet. It actually comes out, what, on Tuesday?
Tuesday, yeah.
You've already created, an avalanche of headlines. We're going to see them right here coming up on the screen right now. All kinds of reaction to This Town, a Washington takedown, Mark Leibovich and the preening egos of this town. Hypocrisy, thy name is duh. Washington, the Wall Street Journal, the rolling swamp of Washington. And, you're creating a whole lot of conversation. And I read the book. It's a fascinating look at the personalities of Washington. You're not afraid to prick a lot of egos, although it seems you're a little bit uncomfortable with it, even as you're doing it.
I'm not uncomfortable with it, but I am very transparent about the fact that I too am a member of the media. I'm attached to a major news organization. I love politics. I cover it willingly. And look, I don't have the luxury of being a foreign correspondent who can sort of dive into town and burn down the village. I mean, these are people I know, and frankly, I mean, I have to talk about my own role in it. But I don't think I'm uncomfortable, because I think when you've been a journalist for as long as you have in Washington, I mean, you get used to the social awkwardness and actually being able to take shots.
So what is your big takeaway after looking at this circus of the last few years, and what kind of blowback have you gotten?
Well, so far, the blowback's been weird because there's been so much anticipation around this thing, and no one's read it. I mean, until hopefully now. I mean, now that it's sort of leaked out and people will be able to buy it in a couple of days. But I mean, I think the big takeaway is one that I'm not trying to pick on any one individual or any one institution.
You take on everybody.
Well, I mean, it's the whole machine. I mean, it's a profile of a city basically in the 21st century at a time when I think self-service has sort of replaced public service as the real play. And I think that look, I mean, people fundamentally are very disappointed in Washington. I just don't think they have a full appreciation for the full, cinematographic carnival that this has become.
Maggie, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. What I found fascinating, I haven't read the entire book, but I've seen excerpts from it. I'd love you to comment on this. What I found fascinating about it, George, is the extent to which I think the American public does not know the coziness between the two parties. What we see on TV on This Week or any place else on ABC or around the dial is this notion that Republicans and Democrats go at it like this all the time. Right. And what you unveil and reveal is what happens behind the scenes when these guys hang out together all the time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say that one of the great misconceptions is that Washington is hopelessly divided. I mean, in fact, Washington is hopelessly interconnected, and that includes, Democrats, Republicans, the media, K Street. I mean, it has become what Senator Coburn calls a permanent feudal class of people who are doing very, very well while the rest of the country.
The insiders of the insiders. I'm going to put you both on the spot here. You're sitting next to Maggie Haberman of Politico. Your publication comes in for the microscopic criticism as well. Here's one of the things that Mark writes. He says, Politico, particularly your colleague Mike Allen, is prone to trafficking suggestive notions in the spirit of, quote, driving the conversation. The conversation then gets picked up on cable and blogs, I'm hearing talk about, and then Politico report on something that is getting a lot of buzz to a point that merits coverage as a viable possibility, something that is out there, which is, I guess, is exactly what we're doing with your book right now. But your response now to the criticism of Politico.
I mean, I think that was sort of a wet fettuccine slap as opposed to a punch. I'm really proud of Politico. I like Mike Allen a lot. I think that we have made, driving the conversation and winning the morning is part of our ethos, and I don't think that comes as a surprise. I don't think Mark thinks that's a surprise.
I want to thank Mark for reminding Americans that Washington is a roiling swamp with a feudal class. We write about that just about every day at the Wall Street Journal. And to get to Tavis's point, the one thing both parties have in common is that they both spend other people's money, which is, I think, the biggest problem. And Washington would be a lot less important, and journalists would have to cover politics a lot less if Washington were much smaller, which would be better for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, you're all making my points very eloquently, I want to say. No, I mean, I do think, right. I mean, I think, again, it's the point that everyone is doing extremely well. But I also think what people miss, and they say, Washington's always been very unpopular. People have always run against Washington. I mean, what's really changed over the last couple of decades is, one, just the flood of money into the city. I mean, the city has become the most prosperous city in the United States. It's home to 7 of the top 10 most wealthy counties in the United States, the metropolitan area is. And also just media. I mean, the saturation of new media has made fame a very, very easy thing to attain. I mean, it's made second acts much easier. It's made wealth much easier. And frankly, no one leaves.
Not no one. George,
I did.
That's all we have time for today.